Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Wanted to make a little bit of definitely a different video today than usual. It's on a extra biblical topic, I suppose. It's a little different than our verse by verse study. But I was on YouTube, and in my recommended videos section, there was this video. I think it was like a TEDx, whatever, and it was about something called the Dunning-Kruger Effect. And I'm not a psychologist, so if I get any of this wrong, feel free to correct me down below, but I think I have the general idea of it. The Dunning-Kruger effect was something that I thought I had heard about in the past, but I had forgotten about it, and I don't know, something tipped me off, and I clicked it and watched it, and immediately, as soon as I did, I realized that this was something that I had gone through and am currently going through, and also something that is very prevalent in the church and just in Christian community across the world probably, but especially in the United States. So the Dunning-Kruger effect is this idea that people who have very little knowledge in a particular topic overestimate their confidence in that area. And they think that they are experts even though they know very little. So maybe this is a person who takes a couple undergraduate classes in mathematics, and all of a sudden they think that they're the next great mathematician. Or somebody who takes a course in logic, or maybe gets a whole undergraduate degree in logic, and then they think that they are the logician of the century. Maybe it's a nurse or a doctor, just graduates from school. They think they have all the answers about the way that things should be done and the healthcare system should be run, right? Little knowledge in a very broad field. But when they go out and they talk about what they know, man, they really think they're hotshots, and they overestimate their confidence. So this Dunning-Kruger effect describes this phenomenon: incompetent people with high level of confidence. It then goes on to talk about kind of the phases that you go through in your life in whatever field it is that you're studying, right? So the first kind of stage is this confident incompetence. But then if a person continues to study, then slowly that confidence fades as they are introduced to more variables, different perspectives, information that they weren't privy to previously, they haven't come across because they weren't down in the weeds of that particular field of study. And slowly the confidence begins to dip, and they fall into this almost like valley of questioning, where they begin to say, wow, I didn't know nearly as much as I thought that I knew. I have all these questions now. Did I ever really know anything about that field that I made such bold claims about? But then if somebody continues studying, over the long haul, slowly their confidence begins to creep back up because they become genuine experts in that field of study. Right? And then their confidence rises, their knowledge rises, and then they're a genuine expert. So you go from confident incompetence down into a valley of questioning, back up into a confident expertise. You might be like, what on earth does this have to do with with anything in terms of faith or Christian life? And the reason that this struck me so much, I wanted to make a video about it, and maybe you can relate as well, is because this is a process that I am confident that I have gone through and am going through. And that is very prevalent in a lot of people in churches. And it's something I think to watch out for so that we can kind of know what's going on. So I grew up in a particular church, a certain set of beliefs, and I learned all the arguments for all of those particular beliefs, and even went to like a preaching school, or what most people would consider a seminary, and was educated by people who believed like I believed. Came out of that with and even before I went into that, was very confident that I knew the truth. I knew what was right. I knew all the arguments one way or another, and I had come to the conclusion that was true about all these particular issues. I had figured it out, and everyone else just kind of needed to catch up. So that's where I was for a while. And thanks be to God and His grace, I've continued to study. And as I've continued to study, new perspectives, new variables have been introduced to all those discussions, issues that I had never heard brought up before. Reading the text of the Bible for myself rather than having somebody else read it to me. We've been doing verse-by-verse studies on this channel the goal is to go through the entire New Testament. And that's in part my discovery of what's in there for myself. And I hope that you can join in and go through that discovery process with me, because I need to be continually learning and not basing this off of a proxy or what somebody else has taught me, but to know what's in there for myself. And as I've studied and studied, I have lost some of the confidence about how right I was, and admittedly have dipped down into a period of like, how much do I actually know about this? How well do I actually know the character of Jesus? How well do I actually know what was important to him versus what wasn't important to him? How well do I know what he intended for the church and what it's supposed to be and what it's supposed to be involving itself in, and what our priorities should be as we go about living the Christian life? And how many of these things that I thought were right aren't as right as I thought, and thought were wrong aren't as wrong as I thought that they were. And that's not, I don't want to give you the impression I'm like doubting faith or doubting God or doubting even the basic tenets of Christianity. There's some things that I'm pretty solid on, but there's also a lot of questions that I have, and it's begun to cause me to think, how much did I actually know about that topic? I was so confidently incompetent up here in my past, and now I've kind of dipped down into the question. So, for me, I feel like hopefully, eventually, as I study and continue to learn, that I can reach a state where I'm confident, but also competent, and I'm a genuine expert in some of these areas. And I think this is, well, maybe you've experienced something similar. Maybe you're going through that process. I think this is also really important to point out, because probably every single one of us can point out somebody who falls into the first stage of the Dunning-Kruger effect, the confident incompetent, the person who's learned a little bit about the Bible, a little bit about faith, a little bit about religion, a little bit about Christian culture and the way that things are done, whatever, a little bit about the church, a little bit about Jesus, but they've got all the proof texts to back up what they think is right, and they are going out confidently telling people that they've got it and everyone else is wrong. And it's not wrong to be confident about knowing the truth. It is wrong to be confident about knowing the truth when you don't actually know the truth because you haven't studied well enough to know it. Right? And I know people like this. They think they've got it all. They see themselves no longer as students, but they see themselves as instructors. And they don't have things to learn from other people. They don't have anything that they need to consider that could potentially change the way that they view things. They now view themselves as the teacher who needs to go out and instruct all the people who are in error. And we need to be careful of people like that, and we need to be careful that we are not a person like that. That if we see ourselves in the role of a teacher, that we're a genuine expert in the field, and that we've really put in the time to know what's true, because we're talking about eternal realities that affect people's souls. And we know plenty of people, across the denominational perspective, that are confidently incompetent. And we don't want to be those people. So, unfortunately, it can be the case that somebody remains in that first stage of confident incompetence forever. And the way that happens is they stop learning. They learn that little bit at the beginning, they get confident in what they know, and they never learn anymore. Right? They just coast on that knowledge for the rest of their lives. And in a lot of ways, that's it feels very good. It can feed into our egos, right? Because if we never question whether or not we're wrong, well, we'll never discover that that we might be wrong. We never have to humble ourselves down into that questioning to figure out the real answers. So people can continue in that forever. And we see people like this, man, in our churches, teaching Bible classes, making comments in our Bible classes, in the mission field, thinking that they've got it and they're going to go out and instruct all the ignorant people. And we see them in our pulpits. We see them in every type of denomination. They're all over the place. We just need to make sure that that's not us. And that we should never stop being students. If the Bible teaches us anything, if the concept of the Messiah teaches us anything, I think it ought to teach us that we have to be willing to question the beliefs of previous generations and long-held assumptions and long-held traditions. And of course, nobody thinks that their beliefs are based on tradition. They all think that they're doctrinal. But why do I say that? When the Messiah showed up, when Jesus showed up in the Gospels, and he presented himself and what he was going to be doing to the religious establishment, and he wasn't the Messiah that they were expecting because their traditions told them that the Messiah was going to be different. He was going to look different. He was going to treat them different. What did they do? They rejected him. Right? And they said, "Oh no, we know who the Messiah is going to be, and you're not it." And they had misinterpreted the scriptures again and again and again for generations after generations. They had passed those down. Even people like Paul the Apostle, who we know had an honest heart, had bought into this tradition of who the Messiah was going to be, and he was dead wrong, and it caused them to, so many of the Jewish religious leaders at that time, to reject Christ and even accuse Christ of doing the work of the devil. Being a false teacher is maybe how we would say it in our modern vernacular. Right? So they accused Christ of being a false teacher because they had a wrong interpretation of the scriptures, but they would not permit him to question them or to cause them to question what they held on, their previous beliefs. Right? We cannot be in that same situation. We have to be continual students so that we can escape confident incompetence, ask the right questions, and then know who it is that God actually wants us to be. That's part of the application. There's another application I think we could take away from that, and that is that people who are genuinely well-studied need to be bold and need to take a stand and need to fill that role of teacher instead of sitting on the sidelines, which is easier, and allowing the incompetent people to be the teachers. Right? Because if the competent people don't step up, guess who the loudest voice is in the room? It's going to be the confident incompetent. And unfortunately, a lot of times those people are given more of a platform than they really need to have within our churches, and I think it's doing bad things to the churches internally and ultimately in our external influence. So the genuine experts need to have a proper evaluation of who they are, that they are well studied, that they do have honest hearts, and then to fill the role of a teacher rather than leaving that position vacant for incompetent people to fill, because they will if they're given the chance. So that's what I learned today on YouTube. You can learn some helpful things on YouTube. I'd be interested in your comments. See what you think about this. Maybe you know people like this. Maybe you feel like this is very relatable in your own life. And to walk away from this asking yourself, where am I in this? And based on where I am, what do I need to do next? That's all I got.